To understand this case properly, you'll need to read the Victorian Court of Appeal decision and the High Court decision which overturned the Victorian decision, but not on a ground that matters to us. The story begins in Echuca in Victoria, where my beautiful Nan has lived for nearly 40 years. Anstruther Street is in the commercial heart of town, and the Lyons brothers had a garage on their block of land. The wall of the garage ran along the boundary with the next door property, but safely on the correct side of the boundary. Stoneman owned that adjoining site and planned to build a supermarket there. He engaged a proper architect and builder, and the builder engaged contractors to start digging the foundations. They knew that by digging the foundations, there was a risk that they might reduce the stability of the garage next door, and so there were plans to reinforce that ground to properly support the garage. Unfortunately, the excavators got ahead of themselves. Without instructions from Stoneman the owner, or the architect, or the builder, they started digging what were described as pockets underneath the wall of the garage to be filled with concrete to underpin the garage. Then they left for the weekend, and it rained, and the ground collapsed. The garage wall fell, and the building was ultimately demolished. Now, the High Court eventually found that Stoneman could not be made vicariously liable for the builders, who, after all, were subcontractors not following instructions. For our purpose, though, the really important bit is that both courts proceeded on the basis that by digging underneath the land next door, the excavators were trespassing. Justices Pape and Menhennett in the Victorian Court of Appeal said, "It is also clear that at common law, to underpin a building on an adjoining owner's land involved trespass unless done with consent. It involves not merely entry onto the neighbour's land, but also the removal of soil to permit underpinning by some appropriate strengthening of the natural foundations beneath buildings. Underpinning involves doing things on another person's land. Even shoring up a building is a trespass because it involves placing supports on buildings on another person's land." The High Court did not question this statement. From this case, we learn that for the purpose of trespass, ownership of land includes the ownership of the subsoil underneath the surface of that land.